care am ajuns atunci. Și pot să vă mărturisesc acum, cu 2 zile înainte de predica o țineam în fiecare miercuri din săptămână.
Și ne-am întors încet. A fost foarte dureroasă întoarcerea noastră, n-a fost
Between my first period of imprisonment and the second period, there was no difference. The torture, the brutality was the same. For instance, in 1980, I was very sick in the hospital prison Gilava.
We are at the St. John the Baptist Cathedral, Washington, D.C., and I have a group of very honorable guests. And we are here today primarily honoring the memory of Father Gheorghe Calciu. And there is very little that has been known or even written about Father Gheorghe's journey in America. Most of us know Father Gheorghe primarily as the priest that went to prison in Romania, that was granted political asylum. But for some of us who actually have had the privilege of walking alongside these giants of faith, his influence has been way more impactful in terms of example of strength, resilience, faith, and above all joy, in which we have no father for never have complained about anything. And some of the key people who actually even helped rescuing Father from prison are here today. And we are hoping that not only resources that will be attending the conference, but others that have been diligently documenting the lives of martyrs and confessors from prisons will not only learn about, but let others know and witness to the power of the giants, the contemporary giants of faith. So without further delay, let me start by asking our guests to introduce themselves. And let me start with Father Victor, who has actually blessed this event and helped us organize it. And from there we go. Please, Father Victor.
Well, my name is Father Victor Potapov. I'm the rector of the St. John the Baptist Russian Orthodox Cathedral in Washington, D.C. I held this position, hard to believe, almost 40 years. I moved to Washington in 1977 from Stratford, Connecticut, where I had my first parish, to work at the radio station Voice of America. And also to help here at the parish. We had a very elderly priest who was here since early 1950s, Father Commander Nicholas Plekatoros, Russian Greek, who served here for 27 years. And by the way, he was ordained to the priesthood during the persecutions of the church in Russia. In 1922, under Patriarch Tikhon, the holy confessor and the first patriarch of the Russian church after 200 years. And he had connections to the catacomb bishops. He would act as a liaison between them, which was a very heroic act. So we were able to live and serve with a man who was ready to become a confessor himself, perhaps a martyr, Brother Nicholas. So after he left, I took over and I worked at the Voice of America, and which was a unique opportunity for me because I was in charge of religious broadcasting. And about the same time, we moved the headquarters of the Committee for the Defense of Persecuted Orthodox Christians in the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe here to Washington. I was the chairman of that committee for a long time. And among the activities of the committee was we published a quarterly journal called the Orthodox Monitor. which published essays, articles on the situation of Christians in Eastern Europe and the Soviet Union. What was the situation? It was persecution, torture, and in some cases death for Christ. And we tried to cover all of the Eastern European countries, not only Russia. And in my work as at the Voice of America, I had access to a lot of documents and news wires. I would see the news. It was never really given much airtime in the mass media. A lot of news comes on the ticker types and the wires and all that, but only that which interests the mainstream media is usually aired. But anyway, in that situation, I was able to first learn of the fate of Father Gheorghe, and his story made a deep impression upon me. His sermons that his homilies that he gave to the youth, especially the 7 words to the youth, I think it's called, and was amazing, and the way they were delivered and how the youth came, and they closed the church, they closed the gates, and they climbed the gates to listen to him, and it was amazing, and he made a deep, deep impression on me. And then, of course, when his second arrest happened, not only did we publish materials about him in the journal, but I began broadcasting in my radio program, which was called Religion in Our Life. I broadcast Russian translations of some of his sermons. I gave updates on his situation. And a couple of times I was invited to speak before Congress, before a committee on human rights in the House of Representatives. And of course, I cited Father Gheorghe's fate, his situation, and I did my best to draw attention and to him and to his family, and ask the powers that be to intercede on his behalf. I hope that made an impression on them, and I hope it played a role. I'd like to think, and then we learned that one beautiful day, Father Gheorghe is in America, and he's here in Northern Virginia. My biggest regret is that I did not take advantage of his being in the local area. Unfortunately, we priests who live and serve in this area, we were serving at almost the same time. There was very little interplay, unfortunately, among the parishes. But I remember vividly Father Gheorghe coming to our church for vigil services. I imagine they probably didn't have vigil services where he was serving at that time, or maybe just for some other reason. But I remember him standing. I would invite him to the altar. He said, "No, I'll stand with you." He was very humble and thin, not large built, and there was an inner light that I noticed in him. You can sense that he was somebody you were drawn to. And I remember reading of the time when he was being tortured during his second arrest, I believe. And one of the prison guards came in, and Father Gheorghe thought that he was going to be tortured some more. And it was Easter time, Pascha. Father Gheorghe looked at him, the guard looked at him, and Father Gheorghe said, "Christ is risen." And the guard answered back, "Indeed, he is risen." And then Father George, I believe he was lying in his cot or something, and he was able to witness the uncreated light. which is amazing. I think this light touched him forever, and he shared it with people who came into contact with him. And of course, I was able to say bid farewell when he was the funeral service was being held at his church. But I think Father Leonid has a lot more interesting things to tell. He knew Father Gheorghe much more than I did personally. But I give thanks to God that I was in the position that I was at the Voice of America and the chairmanship of the Committee for the Persecuted Orthodox Christians. And we were able to, as best we could, to get the word out about this great man. People like Father Gheorghe have much to teach us. All the confessors have much to teach us. And I think the people of Romania and the people of Russia need to honor and respect and learn from these people, and never to forget what happens to a people who turn away from God. In that connection, I remember in 1983, I was in London, and I was there as a correspondent for the Voice of America to cover Solzhenitsyn's Templeton Prize speech. It's a magnificent speech. And I recall him saying that he had studied the Russian Revolution and the philosophical and intellectual trends of the Russian intelligentsia in the 19th and 20th centuries before the revolution. And he always tried to understand why it was that the revolution happened. He couldn't find a real reason. He could find many reasons, but the main reason. And he said finally he came to the conclusion that his grandfather came to. He says, grandson, the reason this all happened is because people forgot God. They turned away from God. Mm-hmm. And Solzhenitsyn says, here I am, one of the most knowledgeable people concerning the revolution, and this is the conclusion that I can come, only conclusion I can come to as well. That people have forgotten God, and this is the reason for all of it. So, living saints, or people like Father Gheorghe, who was our contemporary, not someone who lived in the 4th century, 5th century, which sometimes is hard to imagine, but this is in our lifetime. People suffered for Christ like he did. It's so inspiring, and I think that there are so many books on Father Gheorghe in English and in of course, Romanian and in Russian, and it's out there, and I think it makes for very good spiritual reading. So I want to say thank you to the organizers of this meeting here in Washington, and also the folks that have gathered in Brussels. May God bless you all.